All right, so today we're going to dive into the very architecture of creation itself. We're going to look at this really powerful framework that helps explain why we sometimes feel so stuck, and more importantly, how we can actually move from just having potential into creating something powerful and real.
You know, we're always told that our potential is our greatest asset. But what if it's also a trap? What if it's a way to stay safe, just fantasizing about what we could do, instead of, actually getting it done? That's the core puzzle we are decoding today.
So to really get a handle on our own creative struggles, we have to go deeper than just, say, psychology. We actually need to go way back to a kind of foundational, almost mythic story. The idea here is that our creative blocks aren't just personal, they're actually part of a much bigger universal pattern. So the story goes like this. Before anything really existed as we know it, there was this perfect, unbroken whole. It was made of two forces. Aeon, which is like absolute time, and Anank, which is inevitability. And when they separated, they created the very first crack in reality, a fundamental split that, believe it or not, echoes through everything, and that includes us.
And that cosmic split, well, it shows up inside every single one of us as this core duality. On one side, you've got fracture. This is all about our shadow parts, the distortions, that feeling of being stuck or pushing against some kind of invisible wall. And on the other side, there's cohesion. That's the light, the balance, that amazing feeling of being in an effortless creative flow. Now this is really key. Fracture isn't just a bad mood or feeling unmotivated. This framework defines it as a specific, almost diagnosable state. It's a distortion that we hold physically, like in our actual bones, and it keeps us misaligned with our true creative power. It's that heavy, anchored feeling you get when you know what you want to do, but for some reason, you just can't seem to make yourself move.
Okay, so if the main problem is a fracture in our system, then what's the structure that's actually holding all this together? That brings us to the internal architecture, the part of us that holds both our shadow and our light.
The whole idea here is that our creative nature isn't just floating around in our heads. It's physically held in our bones. And the 12 ribs are kind of like the architecture for this nature. Each rib is there to protect the heart, and each one holds a very specific, fundamental truth about creation. And this is where it all gets super practical. Each of those 12 ribs can be in one of two states. So let's take inception. When you're in fracture, you hesitate, you second guess, you bury your impulses under doubt. But in cohesion, you just step forward with total certainty. Or look at creation. It's a huge difference between just hoarding ideas and actually bringing them to life. You can see the pattern, right? It's a constant choice we're all making between distortion and alignment.
To make this really concrete, let's zoom way in on just one rib, the creation rib, and meet the archetype that goes with it. This is where all that abstract theory starts to feel incredibly personal. So, meet the code weaver. This archetype's whole job, its entire purpose is to do one thing: translate the invisible into the visible. It takes your inner energy, your vision, your truth, and it literally weaves it into physical form. It's the part of you that builds things. And just like its rib, the code weaver can be in two very different states. In fracture, it gets trapped in what's called a chaos of excess. This is when you're endlessly brainstorming, planning, and building stuff that has no real core or purpose. You're just spinning your wheels. But in cohesion, it achieves synthesis. It doesn't just have good intentions, it generates real, tangible outcomes.
Does any of this sound a little too familiar? The fractured code weaver is always hoarding ideas, worshiping potential, drowning in vision. But here's the real kicker. It's not a fear of failure that holds this archetype back. It's often a fear of success, because success means you have to leave that safe little theoretical world of what if and actually commit to something real.
But then, a moment like this comes along, a critical turning point. The framework calls it a choice point. One of those moments where the universe basically says, all right, pick one and move now. This is the pivot. It's the instant you stop thinking about it and you finally start moving from fracture toward cohesion.
Okay, so this brings us to the ultimate goal of this whole system. How do we actually break out of that fractured state and start weaving our vision into the real world?
The answer is a state called convergence. And listen, this is so important. Convergence isn't about destroying the fracture or pretending your shadow doesn't exist. It's about fusing it with cohesion. It's where the tension between those two opposites just resolves into pure creative power. For the code weaver, this is that magic moment where vision finally merges with execution.
So, how do we get there? Well, there's actually a pretty clear path.
It all starts with the origin, that initial, brilliant spark. From there, you move into the coding, where your unique energy starts to rise up and attract the people and resources you need. And finally, boom, the creation. That's where those codes explode out into the world, forging a completely new reality.
And really, that's the whole point of this, isn't it? The entire purpose of understanding this architecture is to stop living in that abstract world of potential and to start creating in the tangible world of matter. It's all about anchoring your spirit in flesh and making your ideas real.
So, the final question isn't about what you could create or what your potential might be. It's about the choice you're making right now. With every single thing you do, what reality are you actively choosing to weave into existence?